Here on FlowFM, good to be catching up with the Shadow Minister for Health and Aged Care and for Sport, Anne Ruston. How are you, Anne?
I'm very well, thanks, Ricky.
We've got a big debate going on in Canberra starting on Monday regarding the Cashless Debit Card. This was something the coalition government brought in. You believe it's been a success?
Well, the success is demonstrated by the communities and what they say about the changes that have happened on the ground in their communities. And we know from various reports that we've seen a reduction in the amount of alcohol consumed, gambling, and the amount of social good that has occurred in these communities. So the proof of the value and the benefits of the card can be seen in the communities themselves.
Now, this debate about the cashless debit card that Labor promised during the election to get rid of, they might need the support of the Greens, I imagine, to get that to happen. But it does seem to centre on, I guess, the broader conversation about Aboriginal people and their control of their income, because there's also the Northern Territory is probably the next thing that will fall if this goes today.
Well, the really interesting thing that's before us this week, and it's absolute rank hypocrisy, is that this particular bill seeks to get rid of the cashless debit card, which is just one of two mechanisms in Australia to deliver income management. And the cashless debit card basically operates in the goldfields, in the Kimberley, in Hervey Bay and Bundaberg, and in Ceduna in South Australia. There's another form of income management which is operated through the Basics card, which actually is in operation in the Northern Territory. What the Labor Party are seeking to do as the government in the same week is to extend income management for people in the Northern Territory and abolish income management for people in those four areas that I just mentioned. So it really is a question that the Labor Party and the government, or as the government, need to answer. Why is it that predominantly Indigenous people in the Northern Territory are going to be required to stay on income management, but at the same time they're seeking to get rid of income management in other places of Australia? It is just unbelievable hypocrisy.
And in a basic sense, there's 80% of the income that was received from the federal government was quarantined and couldn't be used on alcohol, gambling, or other restrictions as well?
So the predominant restrictions were alcohol and cash and gambling products. In the case of the cashless debit card, the request of the communities that asked to go on it, because this card is only in operation in communities that actually asked for it, was most often 80% of their welfare payment was quarantined and the other 20% just went into their normal bank account. So they were only restricted to be accessing alcohol, gambling and cash on the part that was quarantined. In the Northern Territory on the Basics card, it was more often than not 50% that was quarantined and 50% that went into their normal bank account. So it depended where you were, what the amount was quarantined, but it was determined by those communities themselves, or in the case of the Northern Territory government, as to the quantity of the income support that was quarantined.
Now, Labor seems to be saying that they want services to be deployed in these communities rather than control of income. Are there adequate services in those areas to address social concerns that might arise from removing the card?
Well, I think that the fact that the Labor government has actually said that they need to put in the additional funding to address drug and alcohol challenges in these communities is an absolute outright admission that they know that the removal of this card is likely to see an increase in the social harm behaviours that are associated with addiction to drugs and alcohol. So, I mean, it just seems to me, it beggars belief that they would be removing something that they clearly admit must be working, because otherwise why would they see the need to put these additional resources into communities? So, it is a really sad day for Australia that the inner city pressure of people who probably have never been to one of these communities, they have never seen the devastation that can be caused by addiction in these communities, that they are the ones that the Labor Party is pandering to. They didn't even bother to speak to any of these communities before they made the decision to abolish this card. It is just, I find it really horrifying and tremendously sad that we have a government that would ignore the voices of the people that the policy that they're putting in place is going to directly impact.
Well, what we're hearing from the Greens, they seem to be targeting getting rid of the income management in the Northern Territory as well. Are you concerned there might be some sort of deal being done between Labor and the Greens to get this through if you're not supporting it in the Senate?
Well, if the Labor Party were to put forward a proposal that got rid of income management, which effectively is going to come to an end at midnight on Friday night anyway, unless they do something, it will be blood on their hands when you see the result, because nobody in the Northern Territory is expecting the Basics card to be removed. and the consequences of removing it, particularly when there are no supports, there's been no information, no consultation, they would be caught completely unawares. It would be absolutely devastating for these communities. So the Labor Party and the Labor government and the Greens, as their co-partners in this, need to accept the consequences of what is likely to happen after income management's removed from any community, because we know that prior to the introduction of income management, we had some very serious issues, whether it be issues around domestic violence, child neglect, more general violence, police presentations and crime. We've seen a reduction of those things since the card's been in place. Are they going to accept responsibility when these sorts of presentations increase again?
Anne Ruston, we're out of time, but thank you for joining us during the sittings in Canberra in this important debate. Thanks for joining us on Flow.
My pleasure. Thanks, Ricky.